Ever wonder how we went from, like, staring at the stars, just completely baffled, to, like, launching rockets at them?
It really is an incredible journey.
Today's deep dive is all about that journey.
Yeah.
The story, the scientific method. You've sent us excerpts from Scientific Method in Brief.
Yeah.
And let me tell you,
Yeah.
this book is like a cheat sheet to understanding how science actually works.
Right.
Not just the textbook version,
Yeah.
but the, like, messy,
Yes.
fascinating reality.
It really highlights how the scientific method isn't just about, like,
Yeah.
test tubes and equations.
Yeah.
It's a way of thinking.
Right.
It's a framework for making sense of the world that has evolved over centuries.
And this deep dive is our way of giving you a backstage pass to that evolution.
Yeah.
We're going to unpack those aha moments that shaped scientific thinking from ancient Greece to the modern day.
We'll explore how those historical developments connect to the challenges facing science today, especially when it comes to applying the scientific method to complex issues like ethics and education.
Okay, so buckle up.
Okay.
First stop. Ancient Greece, where it all began.
Right.
Well, not really began.
Yeah.
But it's a good place to pick up this story.
Yeah.
This book actually gives a shout out to some medieval thinkers who often get overlooked.
Yeah, you're thinking of figures like Robert Grosseteste,
Oh.
who was way ahead of his time
Uh-huh.
back in the 13th century.
Yeah.
He was already talking about testing theories
Right.
and even had a method for falsifying them,
Wow.
basically proving them wrong.
Wait, so even back then they understood that science isn't about being right all the time,
Exactly.
but about being willing to be wrong.
Exactly. Grosseteste recognized that a good scientific theory had to be vulnerable.
Uh-huh.
It had to make predictions that could be tested
Right.
and potentially disproven.
Yeah,
That's a surprisingly modern idea.
it really is.
Yeah.
It's making me realize how much we take this idea of falsifiability for granted.
Yeah.
We just assume that's how science works. But someone had to come up with that concept in the first place.
Absolutely, and that's just one example of the many insights this book offers.
Yeah.
It really challenges the notion that the scientific method just appeared out of nowhere.
Right.
It's been a long, fascinating process of trial and error, refinement, and as you said, a willingness to embrace being wrong.
Okay, so we've got these medieval trailblazers laying some groundwork. But what about those big names we all learned about in school? Galileo, Newton, all those scientific revolutionaries.
They were building on that foundation,
Right.
pushing scientific thinking forward in incredible ways.
Yeah.
But even their work relied on certain assumptions about the world, what the book calls presuppositions.
Presuppositions.
Yeah.
Sounds a bit like those terms and conditions we all scroll past without reading.
That's a great analogy.
Important, but kind of hidden.
They're the underlying beliefs that scientists take for granted when they do their work.
Okay.
Things like assuming the world is real, consistent
Yeah.
and observable.
Hold on. Assuming the world is real, isn't that a given?
You'd think so, right?
Yeah.
But even that seemingly obvious statement is a presupposition.
Okay.
It's something we can't definitively prove,
Right.
but we have to accept it as a starting point
Okay.
in order to do science at all.
Whoa, that's a bit mind-bending. So even the most basic scientific observations rest on these unprovable assumptions.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is.
The book uses a simple example. Moving cars are hazardous to pedestrians.
Right.
We all accept that as true,
Right.
but it relies on the presupposition that the world is real,
Uh-huh.
that cause and effect exist,
Yeah.
and that our observations are reliable.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these presuppositions are like the hidden scaffolding that holds up the entire structure of scientific thought. But if these assumptions are unprovable, does that mean science is built on shaky ground?
That's a question that philosophers have debated for centuries.
Right.
But think about it this way.
Yeah.
Even if we can't definitively prove these presuppositions,
Uh-huh.
they've been incredibly successful in guiding scientific progress.
Okay.
They've led to countless discoveries, innovations, and technological advancements.
So it's like we can't be 100% certain the ground is solid, but we've been building on it for so long, and it's held up pretty well so far.
Exactly. And this leads us to another key concept from the book, the rationality of science.
Okay.
Even if science can't give us absolute certainty,
Uh,
it offers a way of thinking that's grounded in logic,
okay.
evidence,
Yeah.
and a willingness to revise our beliefs when presented with the new information.
So it's not about blind faith. It's about a process of reasoning and testing.
Exactly.
But that process isn't always straightforward, right?
Right.
I mean, this book also mentions some pretty intense debates about how science actually works.
Oh yeah, those debates can get pretty heated.
I bet.
One of the key figures in these science wars was Karl Popper,
Right.
who argued that true scientific theories must be falsifiable.
We touched on falsifiability earlier with Crow's test.
Right.
So Popper was basically saying that a good scientific theory should stick its neck out.
Yeah.
Make predictions that could be disproven.
Exactly. Popper believed that you could never truly prove a theory right.
Yeah.
Only wrong.
Interesting.
Every time a theory withstands a test, it becomes stronger.
Right.
But there's always the possibility that some future observation will contradict it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a humbling thought, isn't it?
It is.
It means that even our most cherished scientific theories are always provisional.
Yeah.
Always open to revision.
It's like science is a constant work in progress.
Precisely.
Always being tested and refined.
And that's where the concepts of parsimony and efficiency come in.
Right.
They're essential tools for navigating the complexities of scientific research.
We talked about parsimony a bit earlier.
Right.
The idea that simpler explanations are generally better.
Right.
But how does that play out in actual scientific practice?
Well, imagine you're a scientist studying a complex phenomenon,
Okay.
like climate change
Yeah.
or the spread of a disease.
Right.
You're bombarded with data,
Yeah.
and there could be dozens of potential explanations for what you're observing.
It sounds overwhelming.
It can be.
How do you even begin to make sense of it all?
That's where parsimony comes in.
Yep.
It acts as a guiding principle,
Yeah.
urging you to focus on the explanations that are the most straightforward and require the fewest assumptions.
So it's not just about elegance.
Right.
It's about finding the most efficient path to understanding.
Exactly. The book gives a fantastic example from agriculture.
Okay.
Researchers were trying to optimize soybean yields.
Right.
And they had a mountain of data on factors like soil type, rainfall, and fertilizer use.
Sounds like a recipe for a statistical headache.
It was, but by applying the principle of parsimony,
Uh-huh.
they were able to identify the key variables that had the biggest impact on yields.
Okay.
This led to a dramatic increase in soybean production.
Wow, so parsimony isn't just some abstract philosophical idea.
Right.
It can have real-world consequences.
Absolutely. And it's not just limited to agriculture.
Okay.
Parsimony is used in fields ranging from physics and cosmology
Right.
to medicine and artificial intelligence.
It's like a universal tool for cutting through complexity and getting to the heart of the matter.
It is.
This is making me think about how I approach problems in my own life.
Yeah.
Maybe I could benefit from a little more parsimony.
I think we all could.
Yeah.
It's a valuable skill to cultivate, not just for scientists, but for anyone trying to make sense of a complex world.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. The historical development of the scientific method.
Right.
Those hidden presuppositions.
Yes.
The role of falsifiability. And the importance of parsimony. But there's one big piece of the puzzle we haven't addressed yet. Education.
Ah, yes. How do we pass on this incredible legacy of scientific thinking to future generations?
Right.
It's a crucial question.
Yeah.
And one that the book delves into quite deeply.
Because simply memorizing facts and formulas isn't enough.
Right.
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 We need to equip students with the tools to think scientifically,
Exactly.
to ask the right questions,
Yes.
to evaluate evidence critically.
It's not just about the what of science.
Right.
It's about the how students need to understand the process of scientific inquiry, the importance of testing assumptions, and the willingness to embrace uncertainty.
And that can be a challenge, right?
It can.
I mean, we talked earlier about how even basic physics concepts can defy our intuition.
Right.
Remember that drop ball example?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Our brains are wired to make quick judgments based on our limited experience,
Yeah.
and those intuitions aren't always aligned with the laws of physics or the principles of scientific reasoning.
So how do we bridge that gap? How do we help students overcome those intuitive biases and develop a more scientific way of thinking?
The book suggests that we need to move beyond rote learning and create more engaging and experiential learning environments.
So less lecturing,
Right.
more hands-on experimentation and exploration.
Exactly. Gives students the opportunity to design their own experiments,
Okay.
to analyze data,
Yeah.
to debate different interpretations of the evidence.
That sounds a lot more exciting than just memorizing facts from a textbook.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's more likely to foster a genuine understanding of the scientific method and a lifelong love of learning.
Absolutely.
But there's another dimension dimension to science education that we need to consider.
Okay.
And that's the ethical aspect.
The ethics.
Yeah.
How does that fit into the scientific method?
Well, as science advances,
Uh-huh.
it opens up new possibilities, new technologies, new ways of manipulating the natural world.
Yeah.
And with those possibilities come ethical questions.
Like, just because we can do something doesn't necessarily mean we should do it.
Precisely. Think about the ethical considerations surrounding genetic engineering,
Yeah.
artificial intelligence, or climate change mitigation.
Right.
These are complex issues with profound societal implications.
Yeah.
And they require careful ethical deliberation.
So science education isn't just about teaching students how to do science.
Right.
It's also about helping them grapple with the ethical questions that science raises.
Exactly. We need to equip future generations with the tools to think critically about the potential consequences of scientific advancement and to make responsible decisions that benefit both humanity and the planet.
It's a lot to ask of science education.
It is.
But it seems crucial in today's world.
It is. And it's a responsibility we all share as scientists, as educators, and as citizens.
This conversation has really opened my eyes to the multifaceted nature of the scientific method.
Yeah.
It's not just a set of rules.
Yeah.
It's a way of thinking, a process of inquiry, and a powerful tool for addressing some of the most pressing challenges facing humanity. Okay, so we've been on quite a journey through the world of the scientific method, and I have to say this book has really challenged some of my assumptions.
Yeah, it's amazing how much depth there is to something we often take for granted.
Right.
We've explored its history, its core principles, and even its limitations.
And speaking of limitations, one thing that's been on my mind is how we apply the scientific method to those big questions.
Right.
The ones about meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
Can science really tell us why we're here or what it all means?
That's where things get really interesting. This book doesn't shy away from the big questions.
Yeah.
It actually dedicates a whole section to exploring how science intersects with our individual worldviews.
Okay, break that down for me. What do they mean by worldviews? It sounds very philosophical.
Think of it as your overall understanding of the world.
Okay.
Your big picture view of reality and how you fit into it. It encompasses your beliefs about the nature of the universe, the meaning of life, and the values that guide your decisions.
So it's like the lens through which you see everything.
Exactly. And the book argues that science and worldviews are not mutually exclusive.
Okay.
Science can inform our worldview, but it can't dictate it.
So it's not about science providing all the answers.
Right.
But about science helping us ask better questions.
Precisely. Take the example of evolution. Science provides overwhelming evidence that life on Earth has evolved over millions of years.
Right.
But how you interpret that fact within your own worldview is a personal matter.
Right. Some people might see evolution as evidence of a divine plan, while others might see it as a purely natural process.
And both of those perspectives can be compatible with the scientific evidence. The book emphasizes that science can provide a framework for understanding the natural world, but it can't tell us what that world ultimately means.
So it's like science gives us the pieces of the puzzle, but we have to figure out how those pieces fit into the larger picture of our own lives and beliefs.
That's a great way to put it. And that's where things like philosophy, ethics, and spirituality come into play.
Yeah.
They help us grapple with those big questions that science can't fully answer.
This is making me realize that science isn't some isolated domain of knowledge.
Right.
It's deeply intertwined with our personal beliefs and values.
And that's why it's so important to be aware of our own presuppositions.
Yeah.
Those underlying assumptions we bring to our understanding of the world, both in science and in life.
It's like that saying, wherever you go, there you are.
Uh-huh.
We can't escape our own biases and perspectives,
Right.
but we can at least be aware of them.
Absolutely. And by acknowledging those biases,
Yeah.
we can engage with science in a more thoughtful and nuanced way.
Well, dear listeners, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the scientific method. We've explored its history, its triumphs, and its limitations.
We've seen how it shaped our understanding of the world and how it continues to challenge us to think critically and question our assumptions.
And hopefully this deep dive has equipped you with a newfound appreciation for the power and complexity of the scientific method. It's not just a set of rules, but a way of thinking that can enrich our understanding of the universe and our place within it.
So the next time you encounter a scientific claim, remember what we've discussed. Ask questions.
Yeah.
Consider the evidence.
Right.
And be open to revising your understanding as new information emerges.
Because as we've learned, the scientific method is a journey of constant discovery. And the most important lesson is to embrace the journey itself.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep that scientific curiosity alive.